I never thought I'd be sitting across a dinner table staring at a young woman who calls my son her boyfriend and realizing she's 2 years younger than me. And in that moment, my heart dropped, not from judgment, but from shock and something deeper, something scarier. What did I miss? What happened to my relationship with my son? Disconnection in families shows up in shocking ways. It doesn't always come as a screaming match or a slam door or some big dramatic fallout like you see in movies. Most of the time it shows up in small, silent cracks, the kind that grow slowly until one day you're sitting across from someone you love and you don't recognize who they are anymore. Or worse, you realize they don't really know who you are either. You think you're doing everything right, you're working late to provide, you're showing up to the games, you're paying the bills, you're keeping the house together, but all the while, something subtle is unraveling. You're physically present, but emotionally checked out. And here's the thing nobody tells you. Kids don't care what you say you're doing for them if they can't feel you in the room. Maybe you remember being a kid yourself. Remember how your mom was always in the kitchen or your dad was always at work? And even though the lights were on, it felt like nobody was home. Now you're grown and you swore you'd never be like that. But here you are and you didn't even see it happening. That's how disconnection works. It doesn't break like a bone. It leaks like a pipe behind the wall until the ceiling falls in. And then one day, your son walks through the door with a woman who looks like she belongs in your friend group, not his. And it's not about judging her. It's about what her presence reveals, that you don't know your son anymore, that the connection, the trust, the thread between your hearts has gone limp. You want to yell, you want to say, how could you do this? But deep down, you're haunted by a more terrifying question. Where was I when this started? See, most people think parenting is about rules and boundaries and guidance, but the real work is in connection, in sitting down without a phone in your hand and looking your child in the eyes and saying, tell me what's really going on with you. It's in putting your ego aside and hearing them, even when what they say stings, especially when it stings. But that's not what we're taught. We're taught to power through, to stay busy, to numb out. We call it being strong when really we're just scared to feel. And let me tell you, when you avoid your own feelings, your kids will feel abandoned, even while sitting next to you. A teenage girl doesn't end up dating a man twice her age by accident. A boy doesn't fall for someone 2 years younger than his mom without some deeply unmet need for love, attention, and emotional intimacy. Maybe he needed you to hold space for his confusion, his heartbreak, his dreams. Maybe he needed you to just sit on the floor with him and play video games when he was 11, instead of rushing him to bed because you were too tired from work. Maybe he needed you to talk to him about love before YouTube and Instagram taught him how to fake it. It's not about blame, it's about awareness. The truth is, most people are walking through life wounded, half-healed, numb. We think I'm fine because nothing's on fire, but we don't realize we're living in emotional drought. And in that drought, love gets dry, laughter gets forced, hugs get shorter, eye contact disappears. And that's when disconnection creeps in, quietly, ruthlessly. Your kid isn't gonna knock on your bedroom door and say, hey mom, hey dad, I'm starting to feel emotionally neglected. They're just gonna act out, or disappear, or find love in people who don't know how to love them well, because it feels familiar. You ever see a child cling to someone toxic and wonder why? It's because they're mimicking the emotional climate they were raised in, even if that climate was built with good intentions. Because love without presence feels just like abandonment. And that's the hard truth most parents never want to face. Disconnection doesn't care about your bank account or your job title or how many presents you bought for Christmas. It's measured in time, in attention, in safety. Did your kids feel safe being real around you? Or did they learn to lie just to keep the peace. And sometimes the most shocking part of family disconnection isn't what your child does. It's when you realize you did the same thing at their age. You buried your pain in relationships, in attention, in control. You didn't know better, but now you do. What are you going to do with that truth? There's this brutal moment every parent faces. The realization that your child's behavior is a reflection of the emotional environment you built, not the rules you made. That moment is like a mirror, and it doesn't lie. It won't flatter you. It won't sugarcoat what you missed. But it can be the doorway to something better, something deeper, something real. Maybe this is your wake-up call. Maybe the shocking thing that just happened in your family, the relationship, the rebellion, the silence, isn't just a disaster. Maybe it's the signal that it's time to come back home. Not just to your house, but to your heart, to the part of you that feels, that listens, that connects. Because at the end of the day, no matter how messy it's been, your presence still has power. Your heart still matters. And your family, they don't need you to be perfect. They need you to show up. Unhealed parents create confused children. And this isn't some poetic idea. It's a brutal truth that plays out in homes every single day. You see it when a child flinches at criticism, even when it's gentle. You see it when your teenager dates someone who treats them the same way you allowed yourself to be treated. You see it when your little girl screams at her toys, not because she's naughty, but because that's what anger looked like in your house. You see it when your son shuts down emotionally and you wonder why, forgetting that every time you felt something, you told yourself, "I'm fine," and taught him to do the same. Children aren't just raised by what we say. They are shaped by what we suppress, by what we ignore, by the traumas we refuse to heal. You think you're protecting them by hiding your pain? You're not. You're passing it down. A parent who never learned to say, "I'm hurting," creates a child who never learns to say, "I need help." A father who never dealt with his own father's rage raises a son who either becomes angry or becomes invisible. A mother who still holds on to the abandonment of her own childhood becomes emotionally unavailable, not because she wants to be cold, but because the idea of being vulnerable feels like walking naked into a war zone. You want to know why your child is anxious, insecure, always trying to be perfect? Look at the way you talk to yourself when you make a mistake. Look at the way you react to conflict. Look at how uncomfortable you get when someone expresses emotion. Children inhabit the emotional landscape you build, whether you meant to build it or not. Let's make it real for a moment. Imagine a little boy named Micah. Micah's dad grew up with a father who told him, "Real men don't cry. Suck it up." So now Micah's dad repeats the same line, not just with words, but with the tone in his voice, the way he glares when Micah's eyes water, the way he claps his hands and says, "We don't do that here." Micah's only 7. His brain is still forming. But now, every time he feels sadness, his body tightens, his stomach tightens, his breath shortens. And slowly, he learns the most dangerous lesson a boy can ever learn: to stop feeling. But it doesn't stop there. You fast forward 20 years, Micah's in a relationship now. His girlfriend cries one night because she's overwhelmed. And what does Micah do? He freezes. He walks away. He says, "You're being dramatic," because he never learned to be safe with feelings. That confusion didn't start with her. It started with his dad's unhealed wounds. Now you have two broken people trying to figure out love in a house built on silence. It's not about demonizing parents. It's about understanding that pain travels through generations until someone is brave enough to feel it, face it, and heal it. You can't fake healing. You can't cover it up with vacations or good grades or a pretty house. Your child knows when you're living in survival mode. They feel when your love is anxious, when your touch is distant, when your words are filtered through decades of your own unprocessed pain. Maybe your kid doesn't feel seen, not because you don't care, but because you never felt seen. And now you don't know what that looks like. Maybe you get triggered by your child's independence, not because they're doing anything wrong, but because you were punished for having your own voice. And now theirs feels threatening. That's not parenting. That's your trauma reacting in real time. Your unhealed wounds are not your fault, but the moment you see them, they become your responsibility. It takes real courage to admit that some of the things you've been calling parenting were actually just coping. It takes radical honesty to say, I love my kids, but I'm hurting. And if I don't deal with this pain, I'm going to hand it to them like an inheritance. We spend so much time teaching our kids how to tie their shoes, how to ride a bike, how to behave in public. But do we teach them how to feel, how to recover from heartbreak, how to regulate anger, how to sit with sadness without needing to escape it? You can't teach what you've never learned. That's why the healing has to start with you. The most powerful thing a parent can do is not to have all the answers, but to be honest enough to say, I'm healing and I want to walk through this with you. That moment when a parent drops the mask, steps off the pedestal, and looks their child in the eye and says, I'm sorry, I didn't know better, but I want to learn. That's the moment a confused child starts to become a whole adult. Your healing is their clarity. You want to raise strong, kind, emotionally grounded kids, then you have to go first. You have to show them that healing isn't shameful, that therapy isn't weakness, that breaking generational patterns isn't betrayal. It's liberate. Because here's the reality no one wants to talk about. If you don't face your childhood, your child will relive it. Not in the same exact way, but in patterns, in relationships, in the way they either run from love or chase after it like it's the only thing that can save them. You didn't break the cycle, you just made it quieter. And it will stay that way until someone finally says, it ends with me. Fantasy is easier than emotional maturity, but it costs more. It costs more because fantasy always feels good at first. It whispers lies dressed as dreams. It tells you what you want to hear. It gives you the illusion of control without the weight of responsibility. It wraps pain in distraction, layers it in dopamine, sells you temporary highs while slowly draining your long-term peace. Fantasy is the reason people chase love instead of becoming love, is the reason so many relationships start on fire and end in ashes. Because it's easier to imagine than to actually connect. See, emotional maturity, that's work. That's honesty. That's looking someone you love in the eyes and saying, I'm scared, but I'm staying. It's not sexy or cinematic. It's not filled with constant butterflies or perfect moments. It's raw. It's awkward. It's two people learning how to hold their own hearts and each other's at the same time. And most people run from it because you can't fake maturity. You either do the work or you hide behind the fantasy. Take a woman named Tanya. She's in her mid-30s, gorgeous, talented, sharp, but her relationships always fall apart. Not because she can't find a man, but because she's addicted to the feeling of falling in love, not the reality of building it. Every guy she dates is the one after 2 weeks. She imagines the wedding, the house, the life before she even learns how he handles conflict. The moment things get uncomfortable, when he pulls away emotionally or sets a boundary, her fantasy shatters and she walks away. Why? Because fantasy never demands accountability, but emotional maturity always will. You can fake fantasy on social media. You can curate the perfect life with filters and smiles and vacation selfies, but you can't fake depth when the lights are off and you're lying next to someone who doesn't know the real you because you don't even know the real you. People say they want love, but what they often want is to feel good about themselves through someone else. That's not love, that's fantasy. Emotional maturity asks more. It says, are you willing to be misunderstood without getting defensive? Are you willing to listen when your ego wants to scream? Are you brave enough to say, I was wrong, even if you meant well? Fantasy avoids discomfort. Maturity walks through it and grows. It shows up in parenting too. It's easier to fantasize about raising perfect kids than it is to face your own childhood wounds. It's easier to say, I'll never let my kids go through what I went through than to sit down and feel what you went through. But that unprocessed pain, it doesn't disappear, it leaks through your voice when you yell, through your silence when you shut down, or through your silence when you shut down, or through your silence when you shut down. Through your perfectionism when nothing your kids do feels good enough, even though they're begging for your love with every behavior. Fantasy costs more. It's the reason people stay in toxic relationships, because the fantasy of what could be is more intoxicating than the truth of what is. It's the reason people don't heal, because the fantasy of who they pretend to be is easier than the chaos of facing who they actually are. But here's the part that hits hardest. Fantasy is always more expensive in the end, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You'll spend years chasing something that doesn't exist. You'll wake up next to people who never knew your soul. You'll get everything you thought you wanted and feel empty anyway, because fantasy is hunger without nourishment. It's a house with no foundation. It looks pretty until the first storm hits. And then you realize you never built anything real. You ever meet someone who's been in 6 relationships in 5 years and says no one is loyal anymore? That's not bad luck. That's a fantasy addiction. That's someone who wants the fruit without planting the tree. That's someone who never sat down to ask, why am I attracted to people who don't love me well? And if you want to break free from that cycle, it starts with a question that only mature people are willing to ask. What pain am I avoiding by choosing fantasy over truth? It might be the pain of rejection, of not being chosen as a child, of growing up in a home where love had conditions. And now you're looking for someone to fix the wound instead of learning how to hold it, honor it, and heal it yourself. Fantasy keeps you passive. Maturity demands action. Fantasy waits for the right person to fix you. Maturity says, let me do the work so I can be whole. With or without them. You want real love? You want real growth? Real peace? Then you have to choose reality over illusion. And that starts with owning your story. Not the edited version, but the messy, beautiful, terrifying truth of who you are and what you've been through. The truth is, emotional maturity is a quiet rebellion in a world that's addicted to instant gratification. It's saying, I choose healing over hiding. I choose connection over comfort. I choose growth, and not everyone will make that choice. But if you do, if you dare to face yourself, to love without losing yourself, to feel without numbing, to stay when it's hard and still keep your integrity, you won't just have a better life, you'll have a real one. Your kids don't need you to be perfect, they need you to be present. We live in a world that worships perfection. Parents scroll through filtered Instagram posts and polished family photos and think, I'm failing. They watch influencers with color-coordinated homes and kids in matching outfits and feel this gnawing guilt that says, why can't I be more like that? But your kids aren't asking for perfection. They're asking for you. They don't care if dinner's gourmet or frozen pizza. They care if you're sitting at the table, looking them in the eyes, not over their heads while scrolling your phone. They don't care if their birthday party has balloons that match the theme. They care if you're there singing the song with your off-key voice and a messy cake in hand. Children don't remember the flawless moments. They remember the real ones. Like the night you were tired but still let them crawl into your lap. The afternoon you stopped folding laundry just to listen to a story that didn't make any sense, but was everything to them. They remember the feeling of your hands on their back after a bad dream. The sound of your laugh when they said something silly. The way you showed up after they messed up at school instead of shaming them. Presence isn't about being physically near. It's about being emotionally available. It's when your eyes meet theirs and say, I see you. I hear you. You matter. Too many kids are starving for that kind of presence because their parents are drowning in the illusion of needing to get it all right. There's a father named Marcus. Works 60 hours a week. Good man. Loves his family deeply. But somewhere along the way, he bought into the lie that providing more is how he proves his love. So he buys the new bikes, the new shoes. He keeps the fridge full, the bills paid. But his daughter, Olivia, 10 years old, writes in her journal, I miss daddy even when he's home. Why? Because when he is there, he's exhausted, distracted, numb. She'd trade every toy in her room just to have 30 minutes of her dad sitting on the floor, just being with her. Perfection tells you to perform. Presence invites you to connect. Your kid won't remember if the house was spotless, but they'll remember if you let them help you cook, even if it meant flour on the floor and eggshells in the batter. They'll remember that you let them mess up, try again, and that you didn't freak out when things didn't go smoothly. You want to give your child the greatest gift? Give them a parent who's in the moment. A parent who isn't too ashamed to apologize, who doesn't pretend to have all the answers, who says, hey, I'm still figuring this out too, but I'm not going anywhere. Let me tell you something powerful. Presence heals what perfection breaks. A perfect parent will raise a child afraid to fail. A present parent will raise a child who knows that even failure is safe ground. Because when you show up as you are, you teach your child that they can show up as they are, that they don't have to earn love through achievement, that their worth isn't in grades or trophies or behavior, it's in their being. There's a mom named Rena. She struggles with anxiety. She worries she's too emotional, too inconsistent. But every night, no matter what kind of day it's been, she tucks her son into bed and says, even when I mess up, I love you forever. Her son is only 6, but he already has the language of grace because he's learning it from a mother who isn't perfect, but is real. You don't have to know every answer. You just have to show up, even on the hard days. The days you're not proud of your tone. The days you say something you regret. The days you feel like you're falling apart. It's especially on those days that presence matters most. Because your kid is watching, not for flawlessness, but for consistency. They're watching to see if you'll come back after the storm. If you'll say sorry. If you'll try again. That's where trust is built. Not in the fantasy of perfection, but in the reality of relationship. You can go to therapy, you can read the books, you can follow the parenting experts, but at the end of the day, the question is simple. Are you with your kids? Not just around them, but with them. Are you hearing what's behind their words? Are you noticing when their silence is louder than usual? Are you willing to sit in their world even when you don't understand it? Because kids are intuitive. They know when you're faking it. They know when your body is there, but your mind is a million miles away. And what they crave is someone who will pause the world for a moment and say, you matter more than this task, this phone, this meeting, this email. It requires the true version of you, the you that makes mistakes but owns them, the you that cries sometimes and lets them see it, the you that fights to stay connected even when everything in life pulls you in 1,000 directions. Presence doesn't demand you be extraordinary. It just asks that you be there fully, authentically, freely, because for a child, your presence is proof that they are loved. Healing starts the moment you own the truth out loud. Not the watered down version, not the story you tell to make yourself look okay, not the mask you wear to protect your image, but the raw, unfiltered, gut-wrenching truth, the one that's been living in your chest for years, the one you whisper to yourself when no one else is around. That truth. The moment it comes out of your mouth, something begins to break. But it's not you. It's the shame, it's the fear, it's the lie that says, if they knew the real me, they'd walk away. Healing doesn't start with a solution, it starts with confession. It starts when you say, this is who I am. This is what I've been through. This is what I've done. And I can't carry it alone anymore. There's a woman named Erin. She spent most of her life performing, always smiling, always helpful, always fine. She held it together for her kids, her husband, her coworkers. But behind that perfect image was a woman drowning in childhood trauma, sexual abuse, a father who left, a mother who blamed her, and she never told a soul. For decades, she believed her silence kept her safe, but all it really did was lock her pain inside like a ticking bomb. One night, sitting on the edge of her bed, she whispered out loud to no one I was just a little girl, and no one protected me. And in that moment, something cracked open. She wasn't healed in an instant, but the walls she'd spent a lifetime building finally started to come down. Not because someone rescued her, but because she told the truth. You want to heal. You have to speak. You have to stop pretending you're okay when your soul is bleeding. You have to tell the truth, even if your voice shakes, because the longer you hide it, the heavier it gets. And make no mistake, your body always remembers what your mouth refuses to say. Headaches, panic attacks, rage, numbness. It's all the truth begging to be released, not punished. Heard. You don't have to tell everyone, but you have to tell someone. A counselor, a friend, a journal. God, say it. Name it. Because silence is where shame thrives. But the moment you speak, shame loses its grip. It can't survive in the light. We've got this backwards idea that vulnerability is weakness, that if you tell your story, people will think less of you. But here's what's real. The people who tell the truth are the strongest ones in the room, because it takes courage to admit, I was hurt. I was wrong. I've been pretending. I'm exhausted. I don't have it all together. That kind of honesty doesn't destroy you. It sets you free. There's a man named Chris, military vet, tough, disciplined. Everyone respected him. But he drank every night just to fall asleep. He had dreams he couldn't talk about. And he believed if he let anyone in, it would ruin everything. One day, his 6-year-old son asked him, "Daddy, why are you sad all the time?" And that question shattered him, because behind all the armor was a man just trying to survive. That night, Chris sat in a room with other vets and said, "I don't know how to live with this pain anymore." And that was the beginning, not of perfection, but of healing. You can't outrun your story. You can't heal what you won't admit. And you don't get to skip over the truth just because it's uncomfortable. The only way out is through. There's a lie some of us were taught growing up. Don't talk about it. What happens in this house stays in this house. Just move on. But silence doesn't protect the wounded. It protects the wound. And if you want to stop bleeding on people who didn't cut you, you have to go back and speak the words you were never allowed to say. This hurt me. I didn't deserve that. I need help. I don't know how to forgive, but I want to. I miss the version of me that existed before the trauma. This isn't about blaming others. This is about owning your truth, saying this is what happened, and I'm not carrying it in secret anymore. Healing doesn't require you to have all the answers. It just requires honesty. Start small. One truth, one conversation, one moment of saying, I'm not okay. And watch what happens. You'll feel scared at first, exposed, but then you'll feel lighter because the burden doesn't own you anymore, because now it's in the open. Now it can be dealt with. Now you can breathe. You want to teach your kids resilience? Show them what it looks like to own your truth. Show them that strong people cry, that brave people admit when they're hurting, that love isn't built on hiding, but on honesty. There are grown men walking around with a 10-year-old version of themselves still screaming inside. Grown women trying to mother while still mourning the mother they never had. And the silence is killing them. But the moment they say it out loud, everything starts to change. The pain doesn't vanish, but it gets purpose. The scars don't disappear, but they stop bleeding. The past doesn't define you, but it informs your future with truth. There is no healing in hiding, only surviving. And you weren't made to just survive. You were made to live, to love, to breathe again, to stand in front of the mirror and say, this is my story, and I'm not ashamed of it anymore. Because truth doesn't break you, it builds you. You've made it this far, and that means something. That means you've already stepped closer to freedom than most ever will. Because the moment you face your truth, the moment you speak it out loud is the moment you start becoming unstoppable. You don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to be who they told you to be. You don't have to carry the shame, the silence, or the fear for one more second. Let me tell you something. The world doesn't say enough. You are not broken. You are becoming. You're becoming stronger. You're becoming wiser. You're becoming more aware, more whole. And it's not because everything got easier. It's because you chose to walk through what others run from. You chose to tell the truth when silence felt safer. And that, my friend, is what warriors do. Les Brown said, too many of us are not living our dreams because we are living our fears. But not you, not anymore. You've stared the fear in the face and said, I'm not hiding anymore. This is who I am. This is what I've lived through. This is my truth, and I won't shrink myself for anyone again. And maybe people won't understand. Maybe they'll say you've changed. Good. That means you're growing. That means you're finally walking in your truth, not just surviving in your lies. You're no longer living for their approval. You're living for your freedom. Remember this. You don't heal by denying pain. You heal by dragging it into the light and saying, you don't control me anymore. That's what courage looks like. Not the absence of pain, but the refusal to let pain write the rest of your story. You're not what happened to you. You're not your trauma. You're not your worst mistake. You're not the lie you believed when you were 7 or the guilt you've carried since you were 17. You are the author now. You are the healer. You are the one who said, enough is enough. I choose truth. I choose peace. I choose to be free. As Inky Johnson said, the process is more important than the product. The journey is more important than the destination. The person you become along the way is the real prize. And that person, you're becoming fireproof. You're becoming the kind of person who turns pain into purpose, scars into wisdom, and silence into a roar. You want to be a better parent, a better friend, a better human being? Then stop striving for perfection and start living in truth. Because when you live in truth, you create space for healing, space for love, space for connection. You give your kids permission to be real. You give your relationships a foundation that doesn't crack when things get hard. You give your soul the peace it's been craving for years. And listen closely, people will feel your truth before they understand it. Some will be inspired, some will be uncomfortable, some will walk away, but the right ones, the real ones, will draw near. Because truth has gravity. It pulls real people, real love, real healing into your life. Don't just chase a dream. Chase the version of yourself that's free. Free from pretending, free from performance, free from pressure to be perfect. Chase the version of yourself that laughs without guilt, cries without shame, and speaks truth without fear. As Brené Brown said, owning your story is the bravest thing you'll ever do. And you, standing here, speaking out, living honest, you're not just brave, you're becoming legendary. Let the world keep chasing perfect, you'll chase real. Let others run from the mirror, you'll stand in front of it and say, this is me, all of me, and I'm not afraid anymore. Because healing doesn't belong to the perfect, it belongs to the honest. And once you've tasted that kind of honesty, once you've spoken the truth and felt the weight lift off your chest, there's no going back. You're not who you were, you're becoming who you were meant to be. And the world better watch out, because when a person heals, when a soul comes alive in truth, when a heart finally speaks what it once buried, that person becomes unshakable. That person becomes a light. That person becomes a voice that sets others free. And that person, my friend, is you.